Here we go. What up, everybody? You're now tuned into the true definition of a sports fanatic. I'm your host, Brandon Lampley. Today, I got another special guest, a true sports fanatic just like me, man. We're going to talk some football today, but introduce yourself to the people, man.
Appreciate you for having me on. My name's TreJean Watkins. I'm a journalist / reporter that covers the Tennessee Titans based out of Nashville, Tennessee. I write for a couple websites, BlackSportsOnline and TitansBrawl, over on the Brawl Network, where I'm putting out some work still. So, thanks for having me on, man. Real appreciate it.
Oh, man, no problem, man. We speaking and talking about sports media and, getting into the industry. And, when I first thought about starting it and getting on, one of the things you get discouraged because you look at so many people that are in it and so many people that are trying to do it. But I realized really early on that it doesn't matter who's in the field or what you want to do, because there's always going to be a lane for you. And one thing about it is consistency. Yeah, you might see people in there for a minute and people fall off, people stop doing it, people lose interest. But everybody doesn't stay consistent with it. And a lot of people fall off, man. So where somebody else fall could be your game. So you just got to keep it going.
Yeah, exactly. And you hit it on the head. Consistency, man. There's so many people that want to get into journalism and sports journalism and sports reporting. They go to these small websites, and that's just fine. It's totally fine. But they just fall off, and then I guess you could say they don't enjoy the process right away. They don't see the fruition and the end point of the process. So it might not come for everybody. It might not come for you. But if you just keep on trying and jogging and chugging, then you're going to put yourself more likely than not in a position to where you can advance your career into something bigger. You can write for a bigger newspaper, write for a bigger website, cover sports for a better, well-known TV station. That doesn't matter. You just got to keep on trying, dig your foot in the ground, keep grinding, and more likely than not, you'll find yourself in a better position down the road.
Yeah, I think it's Cat Williams said it in the stand-up years ago, man. He said, man, people no longer respect the grind. They no longer respect the hustle. They want to be ballers overnight. And he's absolutely right, man. He said that back in like 2007. I mean, it's even worse today, man. We live in a microwave society to where, I always say it all the time, comparison is the thief of joy, man, because once you constantly compare yourself to your peers, to other people, see how their life is going, you wondering why you're not where they are because you might be of similar age or in the same industry. I mean, you cannot do that, because one thing about it, regardless of what somebody has or what they have accomplished, all you see is the highlights and the result of what they were doing. You do not see what they're currently doing to maintain it or what they had to do to get there.
Yeah, I think that's what really kills the whole, like you said, comparison steals joy, thieves joy. When you're starting out as a writer and you're constantly trying to compare yourself to where you want to be, maybe to the big boys, to the guys that are covered in the same market as you. And like you said, it can just steal the joy of the process of trying to get to where you want to go. Like you said, you can't do that. You can't do that, because once you lose your joy, once you lose your passion, then there's just no point in you doing what you're doing. Because if you want to be where you want to be, you gotta have the passion. You gotta have the passion. You got the passion to work hard, keep grinding. Because if you do have that passion, like I said earlier, you're gonna end up where you want to be. Because if you have that passion, just keep on grinding. It's just so many better opportunities, so many better places to just find yourself in, man. You can't just quit. Losing your passion is like quitting. It's not like quitting, but in a sense, it's kind of like quitting, because you just half-button it at the end if you don't have your passion. If you're just doing your job without that passion, you just half-button it, then what's the point? What's the point? You're just making yourself unhappy, man. So if you're in a field like sports journalism, whatever, you just lose that passion or you just struggling with your passion, just keep on grinding, man. And if you do find yourself continuing to have that passion, that's great. Keep on going. Keep on going, man. There's no need to lose your passion, when you're starting out so early. And yeah, I think that's the whole gist of it. Just keep your passion early out, because if you lose your passion early out, then you might as well just kick any chances of you advancing to where you want to be later on down the road out the window. Simple as that.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, man. Had an old coach used to say, tell us all the time, man, don't half-ass it, son.
Mm-hmm.
Full ass it. Yeah, he used to tell us all the time, man. It's like, yeah, and I understand, man. I understand. But yeah, man, well, let's get into some football, man. And let's talk about these Tennessee Titans, man. I'm a Jaguar fan, of course, because I'm here in Florida. And one thing about it, man, the Jaguar Titans back and forth in rivalry, it's almost like big brother, little brother. I always tell people because anytime Jacksonville, I feel like Jacksonville has a little bit of a squad. If it look like we might be tough, Tennessee comes along and shows us, hey, you're not that tough, and punches us square in the jaw. Even the 2017 team, I wouldn't want to have seen the Titans in the playoffs, even with the 2017 team, because they beat us both times, and that was with Mariota.
Mm-hmm.
So so like right now, Tannehill is. I wouldn't say he's not shocking me per se, but I felt like he would have turned back into Miami Tannehill at this point. But man, he got something cooking right now.
It really does. And I think it goes back to what Derrick Henry can help him do in terms of the passing game. Even when Derrick, and I heard so many people say that Derrick Henry was the reason, strictly the reason for Tannehill's success after he took over from Mariota during the season last year. And that's just not true. It's just not true. Tannehill excelled in an area where Mariota just struggled to do it. And that was aggressively pushing the ball down the field. Marcus Mariota
Yes.
had a problem doing that last season and a couple of the seasons prior. He just didn't aggressively push the ball down the field, and I think that put sort of a stronghold on the offense, and it made defenses in their preparation a lot more easier for the offense whenever they face up against that Titans offense. Because if you don't have a quarterback that aggressively pushes the ball down the field, then you're just giving defenses what they want. You're playing right into their hands. They can just focus on one thing and focus your quarterback to do one thing that he just doesn't want to do. So Tannehill excelling and aggressively pushing the ball down the field really helped a lot. Really helped the process and the evolution of the offense. And I think that helped with the way Corey Davis, A.J. Brown, Johnny Smith, those guys, pushing the ball down the field to those guys, and even Khalif Raymond, who had some highlights in the postseason, pushing the ball down the field to those guys really helps in the explosive play department. It really takes a lot of the pressure off Derrick Henry, takes some guys out of those boxes, and helps the running game run a lot more smoother compared to when you have a quarterback that just doesn't want to push the ball down the field.
Right. I saw a thing where Derek's numbers aren't staggering right now. Teams are focused on bottling him up, and rightfully so. I know teams are like, we'll live with Tannehill making plays down the field, especially if you're confident in your DBs. But we cannot let Debo run all over our defense, pushing us around like Josh Norman. Dude, they meaned the hell out of Josh Norman, man. I've seen so many memes of Derrick Henry pushing him out. My favorite one is him being thrown out like Jazz and Fresh Prince being thrown out the house.
I
Dog.
saw that, man. I saw that. And it's I wouldn't say it's funny because it sometimes there are just guys that when they get, completely embarrassed like that, you find some sort of joy in it because maybe it's a player that talks so much trash, or maybe it's a player that you just don't like. Josh Norman is one of those guys where he will run his mouth. Josh Norman will run his mouth until he dies. He'll run his mouth, and he'll let you know that he's running his mouth. He won't stop. And so when you see a guy who's been jawing to you all game, or maybe he's jawed at you in the past, and you see him get completely destroyed like he did by Derrick Henry, I guess if you have some sort of personal grudge against the guy, then I guess it brings you some sort of joy. But I think the added, bonus, I wouldn't say bonus, the added thing that comes with Josh Norman, which is running his mouth, it makes that stiff arm a little bit more sweeter for some people out there.
Oh yeah, definitely. And man, then Derrick Henry, man, has always been in my stratosphere probably since his freshman year of high school. I didn't know much about him before then, but his freshman year in high school, started hearing rumblings about this running back in Yulee that was just huge. The man is like it's otherworldly how big he really, really is. And until you actually saw him, you didn't understand to really see how big he really was. And so, once you start to hear about it, you say, okay, well, we got to go see him. So we go see him, and man, the creator player mode on Madden. I mean, that's Derrick Henry, man. I mean, all the ways you create a running back, that was pretty much it, man. Whole thing was back then, them legs were thin. They weren't thick like they are now. But dude, he taking snaps out of Wildcat, and teams know what's coming, and he was still running for 200 to 300 yards, 4 to 5 touchdowns a game, averaging 11 yards a carry. Absolutely insane, man. And so it was so funny. Him coming out of high school, they had him as a 4-star athlete. I was like, dude, he's not playing another position. He's going to play running back. Why do they have him as a 4-star athlete? He should be a 5-star running back. But I know the star system is very political, because there's some guys who are low-star players who are better than some of the top 5-star players. But they also not really starting to realize because in high school football, yeah, it's very political. But man, Derrick Henry and his maturation process, he took a huge leap because before I would say maybe 2017, he was an average to below average running back. The only time he really played well was against the Jaguars. Like he averaged about over 100 yards per scrimmage and a touchdown versus the Jaguars, but averaged 60 and less than half a touchdown against every other opponent in 3 years. And so, I was like, man, he just hadn't played well. But then he had that night where he ran for that 99-yard gain, stiff arming the whole defense. I tell people he stiff armed the whole city of Jacksonville on that play. And then the league has been in his rearview mirror since then. And, you wonder what changed because running back is something where guys come immediately into the league and are good, but it took him some time.
Yeah, and I think the whole, I guess you could say the question of him not immediately finding success, that he was behind DeMarco Murray. I believe he was behind DeMarco Murray for a couple years, his rookie year and that second year, because DeMarco Murray was traded from the Eagles to the Titans, and Mike Mularkey loved him, and rightfully so because DeMarco Murray balled out during his couple years in Tennessee. But when Derrick Henry got his opportunity, and I believe it was around the end of that 2017 season, 2018. I can't put an exact year. I have to look it up. But he had that 4-game run where he was absolutely insane and almost carried the Titans to the playoffs. And that was the year when they ended up losing to the Colts in that Week 17 playing game. But that 4-game run that he had at the end of the year was insane. And I think that run was accompanied with that Jacksonville Jaguars game where he ran for over 230 yards. But that 4-game run was eye-opening. Then he came at that next year, got his opportunity to be the lead back. And even then, he still started out slow during those first, I guess, 8 games or so. And I believe once Ryan Tannehill was inserted into the lineup, that's when I really think Derrick Henry shot off to the doggone moon because I said it earlier. Marcus Mariota really had some problems aggressively throwing the ball down the field, and I guess that allowed teams to key in on the run game. And so Derrick Henry was bottled up. His numbers didn't look too good. But when Ryan Tannehill came in, he started pushing the ball down the field. He started playing some real good football. And teams were sort of stuck in a dilemma. Do you prepare for Derrick Henry? Do you cover down the field and make Tannehill struggle a little bit? And I think that's the lighter boxes, the added improvement in the run game from the offensive line. I think it really helped Derrick Henry take off towards the end of the year last year and into the playoffs, where I guess we're all familiar with him and his playoff performances in New England and Baltimore last year, where a lot of people around the country were introduced to Derrick Henry and how dominant he can be when he's on his game. So the journey for Derrick Henry to be the lead back and the star that he is now hasn't been, I guess you could say, conventional. But I think he wouldn't have it any other way because you have to go through some of these struggles to get to where you are right now. So I don't think he would have it any other way.
I think it's him starting out the season the way he has, this year and last year, it's similar to, I guess, his style in games, because his style in games, he early on he might not bust big runs or be very dominant early on, but man, as the game goes along, guys just start to bounce off of him. You know, it's like he gets lather up, like they always say, he gets stronger as the game goes on, and that's really how he is, man. I would expect that probably about mid-season, because right now Tannehill is lighting it up, so teams are going to back up just a little bit. They're going to key in more on Tannehill because when he threw 4 touchdowns against the Jags, I was like, yeah, we bottled up Derrick Henry, but our secondary is trash, and Tannehill ate us up. And so teams are going to start to back up a little bit, man, and that's going to be a mistake, because when they do, Derrick is going to get cranked up for sure.
Oh, no doubt. And that's going back to the whole when Mariota was benched and Tannehill came in, teams were sort of forced into a dilemma, with Tannehill, Derrick Henry, and they're gonna have to go through it now. Derrick Henry isn't having the best of starts to the season so far. His yards per carry is under 4. His yardage numbers aren't too good either. But his presence alone is helping Tannehill so much in the passing game, and I think that can really be. You can find an example of that just by the Titans' most recent game against Buffalo. Derrick Henry had 19 carries and he didn't reach 60 yards, but Tannehill found so much room to operate within the play action game because teams are so concerned about Derrick Henry.
Yes.
Brown was running wide open a couple of times. Jonnu Smith. Even a couple other wide receivers that were running wide open off play action. Derrick Henry's presence is just so huge to this Titans offense. And I know Titans want to run the offense with Derrick Henry, want to run the offense through the run game. But when it's not working, you can just simply run play action time and time again. And you're just going to find those chunk plays and those holes in the back end of the defense because teams are just so concerned about Derrick Henry and his ability to pop off runs whenever he wants to. So he doesn't even need to be good sometimes for this Titans team to get going on offense because his presence alone just makes everything a lot more easier in other facets of the game.
Yeah, it does, man. I seen recently, I think it's Jeffrey Simmons was activated off the COVID list or the IR / COVID list, and it's funny because watching him. Last year, him coming off, thinking he was coming off ACL tear in college, came in and he was absolute beast down the stretch. I would have to say that important people to your playoff run, the last couple of games of the season in your playoff run, Tannehill is up there of importance. Of course, Derrick Henry is up there of importance. And the defense as a whole was very important. But Jeffrey Simmons played down the stretch was monumental. So much so, I think that's why your former defensive tackle, your franchise tackle, is now in Denver because Jeffrey Simmons has been so good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when Jeffrey Simmons, when he was activated off, I believe it was the PUP list during his rookie year for that Chargers game, I don't think a lot of people expected too much out of him because he was just still. I don't think he was 7-8 months removed from that ACL tear. Usually that ACL tear can take around 7, 8, sometimes 9 months for those skill players to return from. Alone, Jeffrey Simmons is a big guy. He's a big guy, big, powerful, buff guy. So it might take him a little longer just to get back into the thick of things. And I think that's what happened. But as he got healthier, and as he got more comfortable as the season went along, he was great. He was really good, especially in the run game. He didn't have as much success as a pass rusher, but his power and his monumental strength, in the run game really made things easier. It was an added bonus for that Titans defensive line that still had Jarrell Casey, still had Daquan Jones. And like you said, Jeffrey Simmons, being there on the roster was maybe the sole, or I guess you say the majority of the reason that the Titans decided to ship Jarrell Casey off to Denver because they felt like they could hand the majority of the mission of production to Jeffrey Simmons, and he's doing that so far. He looks absolutely dominant so far this year. He's really improved a lot as a pass rusher. especially with his power, because him coming out pre-draft he wasn't so much of a finesse guy. He was powerful. He's big. He can take some offensive linemen and he can ride them into the quarterback's left and make some offensive linemen look stupid out there on the field. And that's what he's doing right now. So if Jeffrey Simmons can continue this play and he can improve on his game and add more, a little bit more bonuses as a pass rusher, I think he'll really be recognized as one of the more talented interior defensive linemen in all of football. Not just the AFC, in all of football, because that's how scary his potential is.
Yeah. He is similar to his former college mate, Chris Jones.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I first got a chance to see Chris Jones up close. We were watching the Jacksonville Jaguars 2018 went to Kansas City, and we lost like 30-10. Blake Bortles, didn't play well. The Jaguars defense did play well, but Blake didn't play well. I think he had like 5 turnovers. And in that game, Chris Jones dominated. Dude, he caught a screen pass from Blake Bortles, stiff-armed Blake, and took it to the house. And I was just like, this dude is amazing. And he didn't. He broke the record for most sacks in consecutive games, and he didn't make the Pro Bowl. And I said, take the system away. The system is broke. How does he not make the Pro Bowl, man? The guy is good. But Jeffrey, I think, can be along those lines, because when you talk about defensive tackles, Aaron Donald is the standard. Aaron Donald is that guy. But I will argue is Aaron Donald, Chris Jones, and I think Jeffrey Simmons can come right in that conversation with those guys. That's how talented he is.
Yeah, and it's real. I guess you could say, to add even the more scary of the fact of that's where he could really be. You still have some really powerful, real good interior defensive linemen in the league right now. You still have Akeem Hicks for the Chicago Bears. You still have Sheldon Rankins in New Orleans. You have Grady Jarrett in Atlanta. You have Geno Atkins in Cincinnati. There's probably some other guys. Fletcher Cox in Philly. There's Larry Ogunjobi, who's a young player who's flashed some bit in Cleveland. There's just so many talented interior defensive linemen in the league right now. And when you realize that the potential Jeffrey Simmons has is to be above all of those guys, that's scary. That's really scary. So it'll be fascinating to see where his development takes him within the next, I guess, say 2-3 years. Because if he continues on this trajectory, he's going to be talked about as a potential star in this league on the defensive lines, man.
Yes, he is, man. Yes, he is. I talked about this before. One of my other shows. So I got a former coworker. He's from I think he's from Nashville. I know he's from Tennessee, but I think he's from Nashville. But I know he's a huge Titans fan. He's a volunteer fan. And me and him, we went to the Thursday night game in 2019 when they came here, and the game that pretty much put Mariota on the bench, where we sacked him like 8 times. And Gardner Minshew, he balled out. So during the game, we're sitting in the stands, and it was raining on and off that game. And, he was like, oh, yeah, we're going to beat y'all. We're going to this, we that. And I said, I don't know, man. So early on in the game, Gardner Minshew had a really nice throw over Malcolm Butler. And I leaned over to my coworker and I said, hey, that's the guy tonight. I said, wherever 21 goes, the ball will be thrown. Watch and see what I tell you. They picked on Malcolm Butler all night long. It didn't matter what wide receiver. A dude from the YMCA could have been lined up on Malcolm Butler, and they were going to throw the ball that way, man. He was the whipping boy for that game, man. And dude was like, he's like, man, how'd you know that? I was like, dude, I seen it. I've seen it, man, for sure. They did it even when we came to Tennessee a few weeks ago. They targeted 21. He's the weak link in the secondary.
See, I don't know what it is with Malcolm Butler against Jacksonville, but it seems like that's where some of those bad games have come during his time as a Titan. See, and during that year last year, I think that Week 3 game was a bad game for everybody. Malcolm Butler really did have his struggles, but it was a bad game for everybody. And I think once the season went along, Malcolm Butler started to play some really good football. Him And Adoree Jackson made up a really talented corner tandem there in Tennessee. And so when you fast forward to this year, during that game when Laviska Shenault was putting some of the whooping on Malcolm Butler,
Yes.
some of that can be attributed to the quad injury he was fighting through. If Adoree Jackson was out there and he was healthy, I think Malcolm Butler probably would have set up that game. But Adoree Jackson's not out there, and he's still not back. So he had to be out there, fight through that quad injury. But he's gotten better, much better as the season went along. And as that quad has gradually gotten better. So I don't think his struggles last year can compare to the struggles he had during his first year as a Titan, because those were struggles that are well documented and we all, remember. Specifically the Dallas game, that Cowboys game a couple years ago. Those were some real bad struggles for Malcolm Butler. But I think he still has some struggles from time to time. But I think he's more of the consistent corner and player that John Robinson thought he was getting when he signed him to that $60 million contract. So he certainly had his struggles against Jacksonville, but he's found a way to consistently turn those performances into good ones and find a way to play some good football as the season goes along.
Oh yeah, he especially down the stretch in that playoff run. I judge especially DBs, corners specifically, and I trade safeties and corners. How I judge them when I watch them is how many times do you flash on my screen and they call your name, and depending on if I don't hear anything about you, you're having a pretty good game. If they're not calling your name, it's the same with offensive line. If I don't hear your name, if I don't hear 7-7 Taylor Lewan, if I don't hear your name, it means you're having a good game. But if I hear your name constantly being called, you're probably having a bad game. And in that playoff run, Malcolm Butler played very well down the stretch. I didn't see 21 being lit up, on the scoreboard and stuff like that. But I think it's in same with Adoree. With Adoree, man, I watched Adoree at USC, man. My brother, I remember he told me I think Adoree was an incoming freshman. And my brother, he always hear about guys. He's like, hey, man, the kid Adoree Jackson, man, he's pretty good. He's very fast. He can play just about any positions. Like Adoree could literally play wide receiver. He could play corner. He could play safety, kick returner, punt returner. He's played a little running back, I think, in his day. He's an overall athlete. But Adoree is the ultimate raw athleticism meeting talent and basically him getting the mental and technical part of the game down. Once Adoree gets that down, I think it's going to make for a really good cornerback. But he flashes it now. He flashes from time to time because he still gambles sometimes and he'll get beat, but he does that because he's highly athletic. So he feels like I can trust my speed more than I can trust necessarily what I see or what the scheme is, So, but I think over time he'll learn and he'll grow into it.
Yeah. And that was the big knack on him coming out, out of the draft, is that he's a good athlete, real good speed, real quick first step, real good twitch. It's that he hasn't when he played at USC, he didn't commit to one position. He didn't spend extensive time at one position. They had him all over the field. They had him at corner. I think they played him in the slot a little bit, and then wide receiver. They had him some gadget plays on offense. So when you got him to the league and you got him, on their coaching staff that was going to work with him and develop him to get that technical side of the corner position, down in pat, then he's going to be a real good corner because that speed, you don't see a lot of corners with that speed. And even when you do see corners with that speed, they're just not real good corners because they don't have the technical things at the position down in pat. So I think Adoree Jackson has really developed his technical side of his game really, really well. And I think that's led to more of a consistent performer at corner from Adoree Jackson. And I think he's turned into the Tennessee Titans' best corner just because he's gotten that technical side of his game down in pat throughout the years of his career. So if he can continue to develop that technical side of his game, then I really think he can turn into a really, really ultra talented corner that the Titans haven't had in it's been a while since they've had an ultra talented corner. I remember the All-Pro the Titans had at corner during the last of those Jeff Fisher days. Cortland Finnegan. And Cortland Finnegan was that scrappy guy that loved to run his mouth. He was a late round pick, had a chip on his shoulder, he went to Tennessee, worked his tail off, and turned into a really, really, really good corner.
Yes, he did.
Oh yeah. If Adoree Jackson can continue on the trajectory that he's on now, then I think he can turn into the Titans' best corner since Cortland Finnegan, who, like I said, put in an all-pro season while he was up there at Tennessee.
Yeah, man, Cortland, man, I watched his ascent, and man, he was so scrappy. He got on a lot of people's radar when he got in that fight with Andre Johnson of the Texans, man. I'll never forget that. I have a picture of him on the ground, and Dre is like this, about to barrel down on top of his head. I keep that picture, man, because he's a bug, man. That's part of his game. It's similar to Jalen Ramsey. They're bugs, man. They're absolute bugs. But Cortland, he's a smaller guy. He wasn't overly athletic, but man, he was a very, very smart corner. Very smart, high energy, and very technical, man. He played his technique very well, and it seemed to catch on very quickly. And another thing is, his wife is hilarious to me. So she's hilarious, man. I know he was down in Miami, and she mentioned some stuff about Tannehill. And, Tannehill struggled in Miami, and for whatever reason, however it was whether it was Gase or whatever, who knows. But she talked about it. She said, everybody got mad because I called the baby ugly and talking about Tannehill. And I was like, man, that's a funny way of putting it, calling the baby ugly. Which meaning Tannehill's not very good. So I was like, man, it's hilarious, man. Watching him, man, is just it's pretty hilarious, man, to him and his wife. But for the Titans, man, I want to know more about the COVID situation, man, because what I heard, the players gathered, of course, outside the facility. But then the players say, well, team officials told us we could gather outside of the facility. And then team officials say, well, the NFL told us that they could gather outside the facility. The NFL say, no, we didn't say that. We didn't tell y'all that. And then team officials were like, player told the players, like, who told you that? No, we didn't. Everybody's just saying somebody else said it, and then everybody's denying who said what. So what came about?
See, I think when it all started when the Titans facility was shut down after they got a couple of positive cases. I believe it was that Tuesday after their Week 3 game against the Vikings. So once the facility shut down, I think players knew the whole protocol situation and everything. They decided they wanted to stay in shape and stay on top of their game during the prolonged absence and shut down their facility because I think that sort of situation, having your whole season thrown up in shambles like that, is different from a specific player getting injured because first off, it affects the whole team. Second off, it's a whole bunch of uncertainty. You don't know when you're gonna be able to play, and when you do get the opportunity to start back playing, you're gonna have to maybe practice on maybe 1-2 days out of the week, and you got to prepare for a game. It doesn't matter how bad the opponent is. Playing an NFL opponent on maybe 1-2 days of practice is extremely, extremely difficult. That's why a lot of players aren't so fond of Thursday night football because the strain it takes on the body and the mind is just astronomical. It's something that we as fans and writers and whatever, fans of the game on the outside can't really, experience and know about until we experience it ourselves. We probably won't. But hey, what can you do about that? But after, the players wanted to go out there and stay on top of their game and everything. They had a couple workouts. And so once the NFL and once, that whole situation, started blowing up, I guess more facts start coming out saying how the NFL admitted that it was a whole one big gigantic miscommunication with the team and then the team was a miscommunication with the players, and it just created one big situation where the initial facts made the players in the franchise out to be villains, and the team that just didn't follow protocol and put the, I guess you could say the early part of the NFL season in jeopardy. Because when you have a team that has an outbreak this early in the year, you're going to have to start rearranging buys, going to start rearranging schedules, stuff like that. And then if a team willingly breaks protocol, you're going to have to start talking punishment. And I think that's where the whole idea of forfeiting games, the Titans forfeiting games, came from, because fans were upset, and rightfully so. If they did break the protocol, but it turns out it was just one big miscommunication between all three parties. So I think the whole situation was just, I guess you could say, weird and wacky, because nobody knew what was going on. And even when nobody knew what was going on, people took the initial, I guess you could say, evidence and started running with it. And it created one big gigantic situation that nobody wants to find themselves in. So hopefully the NFL can sort out this sort of situation moving forward. And if a team does have an outbreak, I think there should be less chatter about, the whole initial stages, the conversations regarding those teams, because we could have some sort of miscommunication, wild situation like we had with the Titans. So keep the initial chatter on the down low, thoroughly investigate it. And if they did do wrong, good. If they did do wrong, not good, but that's good that you got it down pat. You got everything figured out, and then you can move on to the next step. If you don't know, then let's just hold it down for a little bit and let's just investigate and see where things take us.
Right. Speaking of, you mentioned Thursday Night Football. How the players, because I've always heard about how the players hate it. I've always heard it. Like you're right. As a fan, as somebody on the outside looking in, you have to experience it to understand the strain that it puts on them and their body, and they're very vocal about it. But it's funny because the way they feel about it reflects the product. Thursday Night Football overall is not a good product, and it hasn't been for the last couple of years. It's, and it's not just the matchups and who's playing. It's just overall, man, that it's not good games. And you could tell guys feel some type of way about it because it reflects it on the field, man. Because Thursday Night Football is like, who's playing Thursday night? Oh, it's Jags, Dolphins. Man, don't care. Even if you got both teams are 4-0, teams are like, it could be the Saints and the Packers, but Thursday Night Football has just not been a good product. But as far as the protocols and then figuring out, what guys are doing and what to do, who's wrong, and how to correct it going forward, which I think so far they've been very good so far in my mind handling this situation, because watching the NBA has been the best, but everybody can't do what the NBA does because you have way more players on the other teams or whatever. You can't really play baseball or football or any other sport like that really in a bubble, except for like golf and tennis and things like that. But basketball being in that bubble, 0 positive tests, and so, but the NFL, I've seen the NFL is thinking about doing a bubble for the playoffs. And I say that's way better than trying to do 32 teams where you only, because I think the expanded playoffs start this year, correct? I think so. I think it's 14 teams this year. So housing 14 versus 32 is much better. And I think I think they can do that.
Yeah. And although it would take the whole traditional feel out of the playoffs, because I know we're all used to watching teams play at their home stadiums, or used to the crowds and the atmosphere of the playoffs just completely envelop us as fans of the game. But having those regional bubbles, I guess, for the playoffs, and I guess having bubbles for maybe both of the conference playoffs, both for the playoffs in these conferences, it wouldn't be such a bad idea. But I think the NFL wants to stay away from the whole bubble idea because they want to have as much normality as they can have in this season as possible. Now, can they do that? I mean, it remains to be seen. They've already had an outbreak. They've already had positive tests to some stars. So it remains to be seen if they can do that. But if they can get through the rest of the season scot-free, keep positive tests to a minimum, then I think they'll be able to avoid having I think they'll be able to avoid resort resort to the idea of using bubbles for the playoffs this year. So it'll be interesting to see how the NFL can monitor and maintain the position of COVID in their league throughout this crazy wacky season. So they can avoid it, and I think the NFL will be really, really happy in the end.
Oh yeah, and if I'm the NFL, man, I know you didn't have any NFL people down near the bubble or in the bubble, but I'm at the NBA offices and trying to figure out, okay, so what was your protocols? What did you do? Getting my lead from the NBA. 0 positive tests in a 4-month span is awesome. So if you are going to do that, you need to take your lead from the NBA. And
Yeah.
having players. I think one of the keys were, of course, number one is the players. The players are the key. That's number one, because the players don't follow protocol and they don't take it seriously, then it's all for naught. Players have to take it seriously, do the things they need to do to not put themselves or their teammates or team officials in jeopardy, and jeopardizing the season. I mean, you had two dust ups in the bubble, which one was outside the bubble, which was Lou Williams, who's been renamed Lemon Pepper Lou. going to Magic City to get some wings with Jack Harlow, and then you had the guy House from the Houston Rockets, who is still speculation whether the young lady was actually in his room or not. Don't know, but those are only two dust. Other than that, man, they pretty much had kept a lid on it, and it was a great product in the bubble. So even with the NFL teams not being able to play in their home stadiums, the same with the NBA teams playing in the bubble. NBA bubble basketball was great from the scrimmage games to the championship last week, man. It was an amazing product. So I think you can pull it off.
Yeah, you can. From a preliminary idea standpoint, you can. Managing 53 players for, I guess you could say, 17 for each conference. I don't think you could place those 7 playoff teams for each conference in just one bubble. I think you would have to have what Major League Baseball did for the playoffs. They had the American League. Well, actually, that's not actually all that different. That's actually not all that different. I think you would have to roll up with a couple regional bubbles, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Have 2 or 3 hub cities, or 3 hub cities, maybe 3's pushing it, but have some hub cities where you can run those NFL bubbles out, and so they can go through the playoffs and have that Super Bowl maybe in another neutral location, different from those bubble sites, those hub cities. So it's definitely possible, but I think the NFL would like to avoid going through a situation like that because, like I said, they want to just go get through the season with as much normality as possible.
Yeah. I know they do, man. And hopefully we'll be able to get through it, man. I wasn't very optimistic about it. I did a show probably right before the season started. I talked to Fernando Ramirez. He writes for Sports Illustrated. He covers the Chargers, and he talked about the plans they have in place. And he said the Chargers have been notorious for, I want to say necessarily not following protocol, but, certain things, they just didn't follow and being called out by the league, fined and things like that. And he said it's been totally different with the COVID situation and how they've handled it so far. He said he's been very impressed. He said if the Chargers can get it together, he said we'll be able to, he said the NFL should be able to make it through this season, because they knew positive tests were going to come. Yet those are inevitable. And so moving the schedule, having guys isolate from the team, expanding the practice squad, all of those were things, to help keep the season going. And so far it's been, I think it's been pretty good. Even with the few teams that have come up with positive tests right now, they still haven't had to move any more games, even though they canceled Thursday Night Football. So far, no more games have had to be moved, so Teams. I think a few teams had to go on the early bye that weren't supposed to be on the bye. They're going on the bye because of what's going on. But
Yeah.
I think they can make it through it because as the season goes along, I think you should. Well, actually, we're going into the winter, and they said we're going to be smack dab in the middle of when it probably is going to be its highest, where COVID is supposed to be. I guess it's supposed to be its most rampant when it gets cold. So, I mean, hopefully, I don't know how true that is. That's speculation by them. Hopefully, though, they can make it through, man.
Hopefully, because seeing the NFL not getting the chance to get through their whole postseason, especially if they make it through the regular season, will be one gigantic bummer. Because I was preparing myself for football not being able to be played this fall, NFL and college. I was preparing myself. Not as here. I'm enjoying watching the games. I'm enjoying seeing teams all across the country and all across the league and NFL play. So not getting able to see them play throughout the postseason would be one huge bummer.
Oh yeah, man. That would be, especially with college football, man. I'm so glad college football is back. But I see like Saturday, Nick Saban tested positive for coronavirus. So now, I'm a Roll Tide fan. So now Georgia has a shot now, man. Now that Nick Saban is not going to be there. So Georgia, if you listen to this, Georgia people, you better get it in now, because this is going to be one of the only times one of his former underlings is going to be able to beat him, because he's 21-0 against guys that used to work for him. They can't beat him. So, but now that he's out, man, that game is in doubt.
Yeah, seeing Nick Saban not being on that Alabama sideline in such a big game like this,
Yeah,
it's gonna be weird. But I do think Alabama will end up coming out with the W anyways, because I'm just not that impressed with Georgia, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Stetson Bennett is all right, but he's not some world beater that will win you a national championship unless the rest of your roster around him is absolutely loaded, and it's just not at Georgia. So, so I'll be surprised if Georgia is able to win against Alabama, even if Nick Saban isn't able to coach, because I think I would put some trust in Steve Sarkisian to run the show. Saban isn't able to go, so. But if Saban is able to go, miraculously somehow able to get on the sideline for that big game against Georgia, then it just might be one big hogwash. So we'll just see what happens with it. But it certainly should be a real good game. I'm actually really excited to watch that game.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to a wing place and check it out with some company. It's so funny. I saw a meme about it. They said Alabama staffer has I know he's been promoted to coach on the sideline, and they put a mustache on Nick Saban, put some glasses on him. He said, "Yeah, Vic something. It's like Vic Maben is the name. So he's gonna sneak on the sideline with a disguise, with a mustache and some glasses, so he could coach the team. Man, it's hilarious."
I think I saw that too, man. I see so many of those, but they just don't get old to me. They don't get old.
No.
See it though.
No, man, they don't, man. They don't. Well, man, I appreciate you, man. This has been good talk, man. I see, and I already knew, man. You're a football fanatic like me, man. So I knew it's just gonna mesh, man. It's like peanut butter and jelly, man, for sure, man.
I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate it for getting me on. Love discussing with you, man, and I hope to see more. Hope to see this podcast grow in the future, man. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, man, for sure. So, man, let people know where they could find you on your social medias.
You can find me on Twitter at TreWatkins099. I think I said earlier. I write for BlackSportsOnline, Titans general NFL content, and I also write about the Titans for TitansBrawl and the Brawl Network. Some real good guys over there, and that's where you can find me. I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it, man. Hey, remember, please make sure you like, share, subscribe. The YouTube and the podcast, The True Definition of a Sports Fanatic. You find the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, Castbox, all those good things. Um, Follow me on a Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Remember, every Monday, probably about Monday evenings, I try to go live before Monday Night Football, and I do a fan show where just every regular everyday people who are just sports fans and they're a fan of the show, they want to come on, and we go live on Facebook. We let people comment, we talk, and we go back and forth. Hey, we want to thump your chest, shout out your team, whatever. Let the people who watch give them a chance to come on. Hey, and let them talk, man. And so far, it's been very successful. My following on Facebook has grown substantially. I'm trying to get the YouTube up there, but Facebook, man, is a different beast, man. So, man, if you want to get on, man, come do this Facebook Live for sure, people. But until next time, man, thank you once again, Trey, for coming on. But we'll talk to you guys later, man. Peace out.